राष्ट्रीय विज्ञान दिवस 2021 के लिए मैं हमारे मुख्य अतिथि माननीय निर्देशक, सभी आमंत्रित अतिथि, प्रख्यात वैज्ञानिक, छात्र, कर्मचारी तथा पत्रकारों का हार्दिक स्वागत करती हूँ। भारत में प्रत्येक साल 28 फरवरी को राष्ट्रीय विज्ञान दिवस यानी नेशनल साइंस डे के रूप में मनाया जाता है। महान भौतिक वैज्ञानिक सर चंद्रशेखर वेंकट रमन ने 28 फरवरी 1928 भौतिकी के गंभीर विषय में एक महत्वपूर्ण खोज की थी। पारदर्शी पदार्थ से गुजरने पर प्रकाश की किरणों में आने वाले बदलाव पर की गई इस महत्वपूर्ण खोज के लिए 1930 में उन्हें भौतिकी के नोबेल पुरस्कार से सम्मानित किया गया। वह यह पुरस्कार ग्रहण करने वाले भारत ही नहीं बल्कि एशिया के पहले वैज्ञानिक थे। 1954 में भारत ने उनको सर्वोच्च नागरिक सम्मान भारत रत्न से नवाजा। सन 1988 से हमारे देश में सर सीवी रमन के इस अभूतपूर्व योगदान को चिन्हित करने के लिए हर साल 28 फरवरी को राष्ट्रीय विज्ञान दिवस मनाया जाता है। भारत सरकार प्रत्येक साल इस दिन उन वैज्ञानिकों को सम्मानित करती है जिन्होंने विज्ञान के क्षेत्र में अहम योगदान दिया है। राष्ट्रीय विज्ञान दिवस का उद्देश्य लोगों के दैनिक जीवन में विज्ञान के महत्व के बारे में जागरूकता लाना है। इसके साथ ही छात्रों को नए प्रयोगों के लिए प्रेरित करना, उन्हें विज्ञान के प्रति आकर्षित करना और उन्हें विज्ञान और वैज्ञानिक उपलब्धियों से अवगत कराना इसका प्रमुख लक्ष्य है। इस साल राष्ट्रीय विज्ञान दिवस का विषय है STI का भविष्य, शिक्षा, कौशल और कार्य पर प्रभाव, फ्यूचर ऑफ STI, इम्पैक्ट्स ऑन एजुकेशन, स्किल एंड वर्क। इस अवसर पर NCL में अनुसंधान विद्वानों द्वारा पोस्टर प्रस्तुतिकरण किया जाता है। सर्वश्रेष्ठ पोस्टर पुरस्कारों को जीतने हेतु स्वस्थ प्रतिस्पर्धा होती है। इसके अलावा वैज्ञानिकों और छात्रों के प्रयासों और उपलब्धियों को NCL रिसर्च फाउंडेशन के माध्यम से कई पुरस्कारों से सम्मानित किया जाता है। इन पुरस्कारों की घोषणा आज के समारोह के दूसरे भाग के दौरान की जाएगी। I am the master of my own failure. If I never fail, how will I ever learn? With this inspiring quote by Sir C.V. Raman, I once again welcome you all to the National Science Day celebrations. Starting with the first phase of our program, I now invite the Chairman Group of Scientists, Dr. Sunil Joshi, to say a few words. Dr. Sunil Joshi.
It's on. Yeah. Thank you, Bhagyashri. Professor Rishikesha Krishnan, Director, IIM Bangalore. Dr. S. Chandrasekhar, Director, IICT and Director, NCL, Additional Charge. Professor Ashwini Kumar Nangia. My friends and colleagues from CSIR NCL, as well as CSIR IICT. Students, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all. It's a science celebration. It's normally organized, managed by the students, and due to unprecedented pandemic situation, we have no option but to go on online function. But I'm sure whether it's online or offline, the excitement and the energy levels and enthusiasms are being maintained. The students are being excited talking about the science which they have been doing. Even though due to pandemic, you could work only for a limited time, but still you can make out from the awards and the rewards which students have got. They have done a really excellent job. I would like to once again thanks all the students and the colleagues who have contributed directly, indirectly into organizing this function. I here invite Dr. S. Chandrasekhar to make his opening remarks. Thank you, Dr. Chandrasekhar.
Thanks, Sunil. Thanks, Bhagya. I think a good beginning is always a great to go for an event like this. I would like to personally thank Rishikesha Krishnan for taking time. The management gurus, for them, time is money. And he has been kind enough to be with us today for an hour to share his wisdom with all of us. Ashwini, thank you. Always have a pleasure to join for all NCL meetings. This is one of those rare events where NCL IICT do a meeting together The logos are shared, and it's basically learning from the management gurus that how to optimize the events. So thank you, Krishnan, for joining our call today, and all the girl students and boys who are on the call today, and colleagues from NCL, IICT, Harivom from headquarters for joining this call today. And as made in the opening remarks, I think today we are all here because of one great event which happened today. And Sir C.V. Raman discovered the important Raman effect. And if you look back and see what Sir C.V. Raman has done, I think he really was Atmanirbhar scientist. So when he wanted to have an equipment, rather than waiting for a broker or a Shimadzu to deliver, I think he made his own spectrophotometer and then went on to make what today we enjoy as the Raman effect. So I think science does not need really very fascinating and expensive equipment. I think what you need is an idea. And I think today the scientists and the young colleagues on the call today, I think the message and the learnings from Sir C.V. Raman is how to make great science with whatever resources we have. While our country has gone too far in investments in science and technology, today India is a global leader. I'm sure NCL, IICT have been doing their roles and responsibilities in chemical sector. But certainly I think a message to take from Sir C.V. Raman is how to use the resources available and make the best of them. And I'm sure as the day progresses, from the wisdom of many colleagues and also the young students who will be rewarded today with some certificates and cash prizes on behalf of NCL Foundation, I congratulate all of them. And again, I think these awards and rewards are a small token from the management side to encourage, but also would like to tell my other colleagues who participated, did not make a prize, does not mean their work was not good. I think the work of all of us is good because NCL always has strived towards the best. And certainly all the works which competed for these recognitions are excellent, but certainly committee has to choose. If all score 100 out of 100, it becomes difficult to choose who is the best amongst the 100. So certainly we will we'll look at it, what is happening currently, and try to encourage more and more colleagues as the year progresses. And also, as Sunil mentioned, we really had a very rough time for the last 1 year. Despite that, both the colleagues from NCL and IICT, while we all know that our army soldiers really put their life in front to save all of us, we also know how the frontline workers, the policemen, the doctors, how all worked towards the safety of all of us in the last 1 year. But certainly the scientists from CSIR, especially from NCL and IICT, have become the torchbearers of innovation. The kind of innovations which came from NCL when we wanted the dry swabs or when we wanted some of those sanitizers, all that I think has been phenomenally done. Again, NCL became a leader in making the first vehicle running on a fuel cell. Again, I think we are in the limelight for excellent contributions. Thanks, Ashwini, for the wonderful leadership you have given to all of us. Then IICT, again, I think has stood up to expectations. We launched a product called Ciplenza. I think Cipla sold this product and certainly it has saved some of the lives, if not all. Then Remdesivir, the technology we gave, saved many lives. The oxygen enrichment membranes, which NCL developed, the contributions from NAL and many other labs at IGIB were going on to discover Faluda. So all these contributions make us feel proud part of a CSIR family. And certainly we all work as one family to make sure that India is truly Atmanirbhar and also learn a lot of lessons from Sir C.V. Raman. I welcome again all of you onto this important forum. Again, thank you, Rishikesha, for joining us and giving valuable time. Thank you. Over to you, Joshi. Yeah, I think over to you, Bhagya. I think you are comparing, so yes, I think over to you, Bhagya.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Today, we are happy to have Professor Rishikesha Krishnan, Director and Professor of Strategy at Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, as our chief guest. Professor Rishikesha Krishnan is Director and Professor of Strategy at IIM Bangalore. He held the Jamuna Raghavan Chair in Entrepreneurship at IIM Bangalore from 2007 to 2010. He completed a 5-year term as Director of IIM Indore in December 2018. He was educated at IIT Kanpur, Stanford University, and IIM Ahmedabad. His association with NCL goes back to 1993, when he started working on his doctoral dissertation at IIM Ahmedabad. CSIR NCL was one of the organizations studied by him, and he has interacted with Dr. Mashelkar, Dr. Shivram, Dr. Paul Ratnasami, all former directors of NCL, among others. Also, he has interacted with Dr. A.V. Ramarao from CSIR IICT. His main areas of interest are strategy and innovation. He has been listed in the Thinkers 50 India list of most influential management thinkers from India. Apart from publications in academic journals, case studies, and articles in the business press, he has written 2 books, 8 Steps to Innovation, Going from Jugaad to Excellence, which won the Best Book Award for 2013-14 from the Indian Society for Training and Development, and From Jugaad to Systematic Innovation, The Challenge for India. He was a member of the expert committee set up by the Government of India in 2017-18 under the chairmanship of Justice B.N. Krishnan to propose a data protection framework for India. He is currently a member of the high-powered expert committee set up by the Department of Biotechnology, Government of India to review the BIRAC and the chair of the Next Gen HR subcommittee to implement the report of the committee on reorientation of CSIR for extending technological support to Indian industry. With this brief introduction, we welcome Professor Rishikesha Krishnan for the National Science Day lecture and look forward to hearing him speak on making the vision of India's new STIP a reality. What does this mean for the development of Indian human capital? Dr. Rishikesh.
Yeah, thank you very much for that generous introduction. It's indeed a pleasure to be with all of you this morning, particularly on National Science Day. Unfortunately, my connection with active science stopped several years ago. I did an integrated MSc in physics, but that I completed in 1986. Now, as a student of management, I don't actively practice the kind of science which all of you do. But my wife is an active scientist, so science is still active in our family. So anyway, thanks a lot for inviting me to this National Science Day function. On this occasion, of course, we are here to remember Sir C.V. Raman with a lot of affection and pride. As a student of physics, of course, I feel some proximity to the kind of work which he did, but I was also quite interested to find out when I was reading his biography that he also did get involved in some industrial activities, including co-founding a chemical manufacturing company, which apparently still exists, though it does chemical trading today. And basically the reason I'm just highlighting this is these are 2 aspects of what I'll be talking about today. One is excellence in science itself, and the other one is translation of science into technology and innovation. So both of these aspects are going to be important parts of my talk today. On this occasion, I offer special greetings to all of you who are scientists at NCL and IICT. As was mentioned in the introduction, I have had the privilege and pleasure of being associated with NCL and IICT for quite some years now. In fact, since early 90s. And both Dr. Mashelkar and Dr. Ramarao influenced my thinking quite a bit when I was doing my PhD dissertation. I spent quite some time at both these labs during my PhD studies, and I gathered a lot, learned a lot from many people during my stay there. And it's a little late in the day, but I would like to thank you for all your hospitality, which was many years ago when I was doing my PhD thesis. So today's talk is essentially in the context of the theme of this year's National Science Day. The theme of this year's National Science Day is Future of STI, Impact on Education, Skills and Work. So I thought that given the fact that we have a recently released STI policy document, though it's still in draft form, but I think this is likely to be quite close to the final version, that it makes sense to look at this policy in the context of today's theme. So my talk is on making the vision of India's new STIP a reality. What does this mean for development of human capital? So I'm going to focus a little bit on the whole human development and education side, because I think that's going to be one of the big challenges in implementing the ambitious vision of the new science, technology and innovation policy. So let me just start by saying that I believe that modern India has a very rich tradition of science, technology and innovation. I'm just going to give you a very idiosyncratic list of people and events that have had an impression on my mind. I make absolutely no claim that this represents a comprehensive list of all the accomplishments of India in modern science, technology and innovation, but certainly these are contributions which have had an impact on me. So if I just start with the area of math, I think maths is one area where we have traditionally, going back to people like Ramanujan, we have and of course in ancient India to even more illustrious mathematicians, we have a long-standing tradition of being very good in math. And I'm really happy to see that this continues even today. I just took one person who I think represents that tradition quite well, which is Professor Sujata Ramdaray. I think she is no longer at TFR, she is now based in Canada, but she has made very significant contributions to algebraic number theory and won very prestigious honors as a result of that. If you move a little more to the domain of applied math, then we have also had quite illustrious people. I just remember one of them who comes to mind readily. Manindra was my contemporary when I was a student at IIT Kanpur. He stayed on to do his PhD and then also became a faculty member at IIT Kanpur. And he has an illustrious list of awards which you can see displayed here. He and a couple of his very highly energized students took on quite a challenging problem to address. They tried to figure out whether a problem which had been pending for many years, that can you come up with a deterministic algorithm to test whether an n-digit number is prime or not in polynomial time, and they managed to find a way to do this. For this, they got several recognitions, and this was quite an important, there are several important applications in cryptography and elsewhere, which I'm sure are already being realized. Just to go to a completely different domain, I've always been quite interested in how science and technology gets translated into innovation and helps society at large. I just saw yesterday on the internet, there was a picture of the visit of CSIR DG to CMERI, where he is photographed with an electric tractor. But my memory goes back to the time when CMERI developed what became the Swaraj tractor. And it's quite interesting. To my mind, this is perhaps the most successful product innovation to come out of CSIR, because the Swaraj tractor became the heart of Punjab Tractors, which was at one time India's most profitable tractor company. And today, of course, Punjab Tractors is part of Mahindra, who is the world's largest tractor manufacturer. So I think this is a very significant contribution on the innovation side. Of course, India, I think if you look at technological innovation, has done well in multiple areas. I feel telecom is another area where perhaps we lost steam somewhere along the way, but in the 80s and 90s, we were doing quite well in telecom technologies. Under Sam Pitroda's leadership, we developed some really good state-of-the-art switching equipment at that time, rural automatic exchanges, main automatic exchanges, etc. Unfortunately, we were not able to sustain this. Others in this area have done very well. Professor Junjunwala at IIT Madras is one person I could mention. But I think telecom is another area where we have made significant contributions. Obviously, our strategic programs are very much at the heart of India's innovation activities. ISRO, DRDO, Department of Atomic Energy, all of them have several significant contributions. But the one I treasure the most in recent years is, of course, the whole Mangalyaan mission, and the fact that a number of ladies played a very critical role in the success of this mission. Of course, it was not just the Mars mission that was the important thing. The fact that we could do it at a fraction of a cost that any other country could do it also indicates that one of our strengths is in the area of low cost and frugal innovation.
Professor Krishnan.
A whole, I think, hundreds of scientists in India. There's no doubt about that. I mean, we have had people who have worked in.
Are you able to hear us? 1 minute.
I could take the example of Professor G.N. Ramchandran, who did most of his work at the University of Madras, made some amazing contributions on the structure of peptides, structure of collagen, etc. And these are outstanding people whom we will always remember. In more recent times, one person who really impressed me was Dr. Ban. To start as a pediatrician and then move on to finding a lot of treatments for infant diseases, particularly his contribution to rotavirus vaccine and his amazing contribution as a secretary of the Department of Biotechnology. I mean, here is a person who was a doctor, scientist and administrator all rolled into one. If Department of Biotechnology can today claim that it has some of the most constructive and most supportive policies for R&D in India, a lot of that credit goes back to Dr. Ban, amazing individual who could combine all of these in the same person. More recently, of course, we have people like Dr. Gagandeep Kang, who has, of course, been quite a lot in the media for particularly during debates on the coronavirus. Again, someone who has made significant contributions to the rotavirus vaccine. First Indian woman scientist to be a fellow of the Royal Society. All very, very, eminent people indeed. In NCL, of course, as was mentioned, I interacted a lot with many of the scientists. Again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to in any way, reduce the contributions of others, but there are 2 or 3 people's work whom I really admired. One was Dr. Paul Ratnasami, and the reason I really liked his work was the way he was able to cover the whole spectrum. Right from developing a catalyst that went into commercial application for xylene isomerization at IPCL, but doing all the basic work as well on the catalyst characterization, reaction engineering, process simulation. To me, this was a kind of great example of somebody who could really cover the entire spectrum, right from research to development to application to commercialization, and all at a very high level. So I think these are kind of outstanding contributions in my mind. Another person whose work really impressed me was Dr. Shivram, because I liked the way he went about the whole commercialization of his microencapsulation technology in a very, very structured and systematic way. Right from the fact that, initially they got the patents, then tried to look for applications, found a large consumer goods company who was willing to work on this, worked for several years with that company to enable the technology to be applied, then worked with another company to scale up the technology. Of course, you need tremendous patience and all that to last out this whole journey. But ultimately, of course, it got incorporated into this product of Procter & Gamble. Again, I felt this was a really good example of taking science and technology all the way to the final application. Of course, one industry in India which has always done well, at least from the 20th century onwards, is the Indian pharma industry. So this is a good day also to pay tribute to the founder of Bengal Chemical Works, Acharya P.C. Ray. I think his pioneering efforts in starting Bengal Chemical Works enabled a lot of the work which the Indian pharma industry could do later. Some of my heroes are people like Dr. Anji Reddy, Dr. Parvinder Singh, Dr. Y.K. Hamid, who essentially took all the good process chemistry that all of you people at IICT, NCL and throughout the entire chemical R&D system and translated that into low-cost products which could solve health problems the world over. And particularly, we all would remember Dr. Hamid and Sipla's efforts in treating AIDS. This was probably the singular event which got India a lot of recognition on the world stage as a producer of high quality, low cost drugs. I would say, I think that this is the one event which really changed the impression of the world about what India could do in the pharmaceutical industry. And overall, if you look at it, India is clearly a hub of frugal innovation. This is from a British consultancy report which was done some years ago, whether it's Arvind Eye Care, Jaipur Foot, reverse engineered vaccines, heart surgery at Narayana Hridayalaya. India has an amazing record of doing extremely well in all these areas. But just giving you this context, I think it's also important to realize that our new science, technology and innovation policy, which is proposed, sets an even higher bar. So I think this is where the subject of my talk, I'm slowly moving towards it, that what is it we need to do to achieve this higher bar? First of all, let me share with you what is the higher bar. So if you look at the latest draft document of the Science, Technology and Innovation Policy 2020, it has 4 dimensions of the vision, and I have highlighted 2 dimensions which I will focus on. The first one is to achieve technological self-reliance and position India among the top 3 scientific superpowers in the decade to come. Now, to my mind, that is quite a challenging target to both achieve technological self-reliance as well as to be one of the top 3 scientific superpowers. And let me also draw your attention to the last point on this vision, which is to build individual and institutional excellence in STI with the aspiration to achieve the highest level of global recognition and awards in the coming decade. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, can hear you.
Yes, it's audible.
Yeah, now that box got removed. Earlier we had a box covering it.
Sorry, yeah, there was my screen froze for a moment, so I just wanted to be sure. Okay, thank you. So, if you look at this 4th one, I think this poses another challenge. If you want to build individual and institutional excellence in STI with the aspiration to achieve the highest level of global recognition and awards in the coming decade. So both these 1 and 4 essentially put India as trying to get to the pinnacle of science, technology and innovation. So just to look at, where do we stand in terms of such challenging goals, let me just take one area which I think has posed significant challenges ever since India entered into trying to do this. This is the area of new drug discovery. Many of you would recall that India went into the new drug discovery arena in the early 1990s when India decided to sign the WTO agreement. Prior to that, most of our efforts in the drug industry were more on the process side. We were trying to replicate known drugs through innovative processes. But when India decided to sign up for WTO, there was a shift, and many of the people felt that we should move to new drug discovery. So the reason I'm giving you this as an example is if our goal is to be at the pinnacle, then we need to be really good in some of these areas like drug discovery. So where do we stand in this area? So if you look at the history of drug discovery in India, we have had some successes. For example, Syndrium, which is a new treatment for malaria based on a new chemical entity, was developed by Ranbaxy. Of course, several others were involved, so this cannot really be claimed to be a completely India developed drug. In fact, the initial development work was done by a Swiss charity. But yes, Ranbaxy did complete the process and take it to market. More appropriately, the honor of doing the first India developed drug is probably this one, saroglitazar, which was launched in 2013 by Zydus Cadila. This is the first new chemical entity which was discovered and developed indigenously by an Indian pharma company. And this is essentially used for diabetes treatment in a situation of high cholesterol and is supposed to be quite a novel drug in its own. But I draw your attention to this chart. So just look at the development of compounds by major Indian pharma starting in 1994 and going on till 2016. This is based on some work done by Differding in 2017. You can see that the number of compounds in development peaked around 2011. And after that, it has been in decline. What this basically tells you is that the large pharma companies, after making a significant effort to discover new chemical entities, sort of slowly started giving up around the mid 2000, around 2010, 2011. The peak was reached at that time. Several large companies, in fact, exited new drug discovery. Now, in fact, the baton has passed to startups. You can see the same chart now for startups. So again, starting around 2011, you can see the number of development compounds increasing. So, and when you look at the data, when you look at the success rates, what you find is that the Indian companies' performance in general has been much below the industry average. For example, if you look at the phase 2 success rates for Indian companies was just 17% against global industry average of around 30%. Phase 3 success rates of 33% against global averages of 60 to 70%, and timelines are significantly longer. So in general, you can say that India, in spite of making significant efforts over the last 20 years or more than that, actually about close to 30 years, has really struggled to make significant impact in new drug discovery. And people who have studied this have identified some of the factors. Essentially, one of the big factors is because of lack of differentiation, broad spread over multiple therapeutic areas or target types. Majority of modes of action have been extensively targeted by other companies. And in fact, globally, while 70% are first in class, that is not true about Indian companies. Lack of novelty, lack of differentiation from existing development compounds. And in turn, this is often traced to a skill gap and weaknesses in our scientific education system, historical deficiencies in industry, academia, interaction, etc. So essentially what I'm trying to point out here is that when it comes to really novel technological development and perhaps new drug discovery is a very science-driven product development activity, we have not done as well as we might have. So particularly if you're looking at those two objectives of the science, technology and innovation policy, which I mentioned, which talk about leadership, we may be some way away from getting there. In fact, the same problem exists even when you look at other domains. So I spent some of my time studying startups, and I had a very interesting interview with a person who has run several startup accelerators in India. And I asked him what differentiates Indian startups from some of the successful global ones. Why don't we have a Google from India? And this is a summary of his response. He said the overall mindset in India is of fast followers. Generally, we lack the vision to create categories. You have to contrast that with startups in Silicon Valley who think they want to change the world. And generally, the foreign mentors who have visited the Indian Accelerator program say that US startups have great vision but struggle to execute. India is exactly the opposite. You show the whole, people will run through it fast. And Indian startups expect answers and specific guidance from US mentors, but you know it's exactly the opposite there. Elon Musk tries to tell the world what we should believe. He is not expecting answers and guidance from anybody else. So this brings us to the final question which I want to ask today, which is clearly, I mean, I've just given you two examples. I've given you an example of drug discovery. I've given you an example of internet startups. In both of them, we have struggled so far in creating really innovative products or enterprises. So what do we need for future leadership? So I think it's interesting. You look at some of the very successful people recently. I was reading about Barney Graham in the US, who was obsessed for over 20 years with the respiratory syncytial virus and an incident that killed infants. Finally, in 2008, he thought of a great idea which could possibly, address this problem. He thought, can we freeze the protein in the pre-fusion state before it changes its structure? Used X-ray crystallography to identify the shape, used bioengineering to take away the shape-shifting power. And of course, finally, this is the whole approach which has enabled mRNA vaccines. And in fact, Barney Graham closely worked with the Moderna in their vaccine development. We have several Indians who have also done a great job, though sometimes not in India. One of the people I have great admiration for is Dr. Paul Raj. He was in the Navy, DRDO, BEL, and then he went on to a second career as a professor at Stanford. He is credited with developing the technology for what is called MIMO, multiple input, multiple output, a wireless technology that is at the heart of the core of 4G telecom networks. When he first proposed this idea, it was questioned by others. It was seen as being against the extant paradigm in the field. And in fact, when Stanford invited wireless companies to license this technology, nobody came forward. Dr. Paul Raj had to persevere with the idea himself, start his own company. It took him nearly 10 years to establish the commercial viability of the technology. But given all that, even then as a newcomer to the field, he could finally make a major breakthrough. And he attributes this to his ability to come in from a different perspective and look at things very differently and originally. Another person who I really enjoyed reading about, and I talk about him often in my talks, is Bob Langer at MIT. He has 4 great criteria for a new project. It should have a huge idea conceived by recognizing a critical social need that could be met by inventing a platform product. It should result in a seminal paper based on research to establish the science underlying the product concept and its efficacy. And it should give rise to a blocking patent derived from patent disclosures written in parallel with the research process in such a way that you can file the patents before the paper's publication. And of course, he wants to demonstrate things through preliminary in vivo studies in animals that demonstrate the efficacy of the research. So this kind of a vision to be able to see a big problem and carrying it all the way to the fruition. And many of you would know Bob Langer has literally hundreds of patents. Several of his ideas have been translated by startups. So, I mean, are we going to be able to emulate somebody like Bob Langer? Or more recently, you take the winners of the 2020 Nobel Prize for Chemistry, Emmanuel Charpentier and Jennifer A. Doudna. Clearly, you know, the technique they came up for gene editing, which has today become one of the standard techniques. And again, very, very innovative kind of thought process which went into this whole proposal of this technique, which has got recognition and quite fast, I must say, in terms of very quick recognition with the Nobel Prize for Chemistry. If you look at the new drug development scorecard, if I just fast forward, in the last few years, we've seen some changes. I showed you data from 2016 earlier, 2019, the company with the top drug development pipeline in India is a company called Celix Bio. And this is a company which has developed a strong scientific platform based on AI. So it's not only about drug development, it is also about using AI to improve efficacy, minimize risk in the discovery and development process, which once again says that, you know, not only are we going to need creativity and insight, we are also going to be able to, we are also going to need the ability to get into new technologies like AI and integrate them with the more traditional ones. And you know, it's clearly, if you look at the technology innovation part, particularly if we want to attain leadership, we want to have self-reliance. Just think of a country like Taiwan. It's such a small country, 24 million people, maybe the population size of Delhi NCR extended region. But you can see that pound for pound, it is the most important place in the world and drives the entire digital industries in the world with its new chips. I mean, are we going to be able to replicate this or come close to this? If so, how? And the fact that in many areas, the kind of innovation which is required is both in the product and process simultaneously. In fact, many people would argue that it's not so difficult to design a new semiconductor chip, but the challenge is in manufacturing it with a reasonable yield. And therefore, a lot of the innovation challenges in semiconductors are in managing both product and process innovation at the same time. So you look at all these examples. I mean, there are several takeaways. I mean, spend a lot of time on this, the importance of perseverance, timing, network, self-confidence, conceptualization, ability to link theory and practice, develop new methods, new technologies, learning by doing in the Taiwan ecosystem, co-evolution of product and process innovation, just to name a few. Okay, so now let me come to the last part of my talk, which is saying, okay, these are the contemporary challenges. What do we have in place and what else do we need if we want to make that vision that the STIP outlines possible? So I think we have big challenges. First is simply in science education. The school education system, particularly across much of India, doesn't do enough as far as science education is concerned. Sometimes it doesn't do enough even as far as basic English and math literacy is concerned. We have NGOs like the Agastya Foundation, which are trying to take science to school students through some very innovative methods, through vans, through camps, through training teachers. But unless this gets integrated in the school education system, it's going to be quite difficult for even organizations like Agastya to have an impact. We've recognized the importance of kids playing around with things, tinkering, not just restricting themselves to textbooks. The Atal Innovation Mission has set up Atal Tinkering Labs. They're getting set up all over the country. By all reports, they're quite interesting places. This is certainly one of the positive developments, but again, will we be able to set up these tinkering labs to cover the whole length and breadth of the country? As far as talent development is concerned, full credit to the government over the years for trying a lot of schemes. I think DST's Inspire scheme is a great scheme. It tries to attract talent early, creates scholarships for higher education, provides opportunities for research careers, tries to cover the whole spectrum. Question is this enough? More recently, we have the Prime Minister's Research Fellows for research in frontier areas of science and technology, so that you get direct admission in IIC and IITs for PhD program if you have done a BTech in one of the top institutions. Very generous scholarships ranging from 70 to 80,000 rupees a month. Certainly has the potential to attract really good students. I would say the whole ISIR network is a great addition to the country's science and technology ecosystem. We already have 7 of them in place. I hope there will be more over time. We have the new creation of the National Research Foundation, which is trying to pool funding for higher impact. Again, I hope this will be one of the game changers as far as creating research support is concerned. And we have a lot of innovative programs. One of the programs which really impressed me was the Stanford India Biodesign program, which tries to train medical device innovators with a focus on Indian health needs. The persons chosen for this do a comprehensive needs assessment across the primary health center, district hospital, and a tertiary hospital. Their needs are filtered down, they identify projects to work on, and some pretty good technologies have come out of this process. It's really good to see our institutions now trying to figure out better ways of taking their ideas and diffusing them and commercializing them. Startups are clearly an important medium for doing this. Institutes like IIT Madras have very progressive startup policies for faculty and students, which is helping this diffusion happen. The IIT Madras Research Park is a great idea. It provides a location for industry and academia to come together. I know similar parks are coming up now in other IITs, CSIR labs, etc. So these are all good policies. We've had several schemes to support programs for technology development. My favorite is the Collaborative Automotive Research Program, which was launched in 2004, which was a government program to support technology development in the Indian automotive industry. It resulted in some really good products and technologies. I've pictured one here, which is Sedimac, which specializes in developing control-intensive products for small engines and powertrains, which go into two-wheeler industry, which is one of India's bright spots. A lot of this has been led by Professor Shrikant Suryanarayan from IIT Bombay. We have good schemes. For example, BIRAC and the Department of Biotechnology have wonderful schemes covering the whole gamut of innovation from end to end. As was mentioned, I've been on the BIRAC review committee, and we have been really impressed by the kind of work that BIRAC is doing. More recently, during COVID, we had a really good effort to identify what are the problems that are needed to be solved, bringing together different labs, companies, etc., to solve them through different consortiums. The big question is, can we carry this consortium logic forward after the pandemic is over? And we'll need to if we really want to achieve the kind of technology leadership we hope to. It's good to see even conservative organizations like the Reserve Bank of India realizing that they need to support innovation. So we have the RBI providing regulatory sandboxes which enable certain relaxations in regulation for the limited purpose of teaching. so that things like payment solutions can come up with new innovations. But I think the big question, and this is where I'll slowly start winding up my talk, is all of this enough? So I think we have all these schemes, we have very talented people, we have good institutions, we have policies, but remember, the goal we have now set for ourselves is nothing short of leadership. So if we want to achieve leadership, is all of this enough is the big question. So if you look at the science, technology and innovation policy, it talks about many things. It talks about open science. It talks about a research excellence framework for higher education institutions. It talks about mission mode programs, all of which are excellent ideas. But there are challenges which we need to address. And I think this is where a lot of more creative thinking is required. How can we really scale up Indian science and technology and innovation with the limited resources that we have? Even a program like BIRAC ultimately is few hundred crores a year. So how can we really scale up things so that we can have the kind of impact we want to? Second question is, how do we develop confidence? This is a big challenge. I gave you the example of both drug development as well as startups. How do we develop the confidence to take on really path-breaking ideas, stand with them and take them to fruition? How do we invest in emerging areas? We missed some buses in the past, particularly the semiconductor revolution. How do we ensure that doesn't happen again? How do we build a long-term perspective when we have an annual budgeting cycle? How do we connect theory and practice? I mean, I gave you some excellent examples, people like Paul Ratnasami, Shivram, several others who've done it so well. But how do we make that more a part of our education system when our education system so far tends to be rather theory dominated? How do we recognize excellence? Yes, we have Bhatnagar Awards, we have Infosys Awards, but how do we recognize all the really talented scientists who are doing such a wonderful job? How do we improve mobility? I mean, in general, we know that mobility is very helpful in ideas getting diffused, but in India in general, mobility within institutions, between institutions and between sectors is a challenge. And how do we create networks? When you read about science outside India, a lot of it is driven by being part of the right networks. I know many of you in NCL and IICT are also part of those networks, but it's difficult to be an active part of a network when you're very far away and you have limitations on transportation. So how are we going to address all these questions is a big issue. And just to focus on one particular sector, some specifics in education. I mean, it's clear that if you want people to come up with big ideas, you need more open-ended projects. But how do you have open-ended projects in evaluation system in a school system that has so many hundreds of thousands of students? So some parts, small pockets like the IB curriculum, which is there in some, pretty, very expensive schools in big cities, they do this. But how do we spread this to the larger school system? How do we get students to do their own school projects rather than their parents? I think this is to me, seems a big challenge. So we have to get out of that evaluation mindset. How do we do early talent spotting? I think curiosity is the key. We've got to identify those kids who have the curiosity and then nurture them. But our current system is not very geared for that. Can we bring in advanced subjects in +2 like they have in many of the international curricula so that our best students really get challenged in the school level itself? I mean, it would be great if they could be challenged on that rather than spending 3 or 4 best years of their life preparing for JEE or some other test. And when it comes to college, what about better experimental facilities, more open-ended experiments where the result is not known? What about fostering more undergraduate research, which by and large is something which doesn't happen at an adequate scale in India? What about creating more research internships at top institutions? And can we extend the tinkering lab idea beyond mechanical and electrical to some of the emerging domains? I'm just giving you some of the ideas. I'm sure there are many more. But essentially what I'm saying is that if we want to take on this challenge of really being at the pinnacle of world science, technology and innovation, we've got to really move towards originality. We have to move towards taking big bets. We have to move towards making really significant contributions based on creative thinking. So all of this is going to need a very different kind of approach. And though the innovation, science, technology and innovation policy does recognize this, I think there's a lot more that needs to be done if we are going to create more CV Ramans from India. So let me stop here. Let me once again thank all of you for giving me a patient hearing. Thanks a lot for inviting me. It's a great honor to speak to all of you on this important day. And I wish you all the best in all your scientific endeavors. And I really hope we will see a lot of outstanding achievements from both your labs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your inspiring talk and guidance on STIP in setting up a higher bar. I now request everyone to turn on their cameras for a meeting snapshot. Also, I request Mr. Hari Krishna Punjal and Mr. Ganesh Mane to capture this moment. Thank you. This brings us to the second phase of our program, the National Science Day Students Award. This will be conducted by my colleague, Ms. Bhagyashree. Over to her.
Professor Rishikesha Krishnan, we request you to be here with us for some more time while the awards are being announced.
Yeah, I'm very much here. I'll be here till the end of the event. Don't worry.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bhagyashree. A very good afternoon to all of you. Now, we move to the second part of our program, the declaration of Science Day Awards for the research scholars. And I hope that you all are excited about it. Among these awards, the first are Kirti Sangoram Award for the Best Research Scholar. The Kirti Sangoram Award for the Best Research Scholar in Physical or Material Sciences is shared jointly by Mr. Rishikesh for the significant research on design and synthesis of self-assembled porous crystalline organic 2D polymers and graphene hybrids for the sustainable energy applications.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, I think it was fine. I don't know, it is. Yeah, GP, it was coming out fine, but suddenly it got changed to Word document. So originally it was fine. Rajneesh thing came. This looks good. This looks good. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mr. V. Sudhakaran received this award for the significant research on approaches to suppress black electron transfer and improve dye-sensitized solar cell performance. The Kirti Sangaram Award for Best Research Scholar in Biological Sciences is shared jointly by Ms. Monica Mathur for the significant research on exploring plant-pathogen interaction in chickpea during fusarium wilt. And Abhishek Balmik received this award for significant research on histone deacetylase ZAF UBP as a regulator of tau stability and neuronal function. Award for the Best Research Scholar in Chemical Sciences is shared jointly by Ms. Shailaja Jain for the significant research on computational study of ethylene role of solvent in facilitating transformation in main group chemistry. Milan Kumar Bisai received this award for the significant research on synthesis and reactivity of hypersilylation and catalytic application of organosilicon and the lithium compounds. The Kirti Sangaram Award for the Best Research Scholar in Catalysis goes to Mr. Govind Polwar for the significant research on contribution towards the insight on the synthesis of fine chemical and its upscaling on heterogeneous catalysts. The Kirti Sangaram Award for the Best Research Scholar in Engineering Sciences goes to Praveen Guge for the significant research on development of energy efficient distillation configurations for the separation of azeotropic systems. Interestingly, this year we have an institution of new woman-centric award, the Uma Deva Gupta Senapu and Professor Ashwini Kumar Nangia Award for the Best Women Research Scholar in Interdisciplinary Research. The award instituted by Professor Nangia in memory of his wife. It consists of cash prize of 10,000 and a citation.
Very fast. First one of this crazy was first November.
Yeah. The first Uma Gupta and Professor Ashwini Kumar Nangia Award is awarded jointly to Pranja Mishra for the significant research on thermodynamics and spectroscopic characterization of near-native state in protein folding. And it is shared jointly with Pranja Mishra for this significant research on pathological tau aggregation and glycation and its attenuation by small molecule in Alzheimer's disease. Yeah. We now move on to the Best Research Paper Award for the paper publishing journal with highest impact factors in different categories. The Rajappa Award for the Best Published Research Publication in Organic Chemistry with the highest impact factor for the year 2020 is shared jointly by Rahul Chapta for his paper entitled ion catalyzed CsP2 hydrogen alkylation of indoline and benzoquinoline with their unactivated alkyl chlorides through chelation assistance. Published in ACS catalysis with impact factor 12.35, and Mr. Vinita Yadav for the paper title Manganese Catalyzed Alpha Olefination and Nitrile with Secondary Alcohol, published in ACS Catalysis with impact factor 12.35. The NCL-RF Nanai Nathu Award to the Research Scholar or Project Assistant for the best published research paper in organic chemistry with second highest impact factor for the year 2020 goes to Mr. Balasai Borade for his paper title Total Synthesis of Benzoquinone D and its CPmer and Abispirosides A, published in Organic Letter SCS with the impact factor of 6.091. NCL-RF Award, NCL-RF Gupta Pardesi Senani Award for the best published research paper in biological sciences with highest impact factor for the year 2020 is shared jointly by Kushal Gohil for his paper entitled Pangenomic of Ochrabacterium species from the clinical and environmental origin, reveal distinct population and the possible links, published in Genomics Elsewhere with impact factor of 6.205, and it is shared jointly by Monica Mathur for the paper titled Plant Pathogen Interaction, MicroRNA Mediated Trans-Kingdom Gene Regulation in Fungi and their host plant, published in Genomics Elsewhere with the impact factor of 6.205. Dr. Krishnan Award to the Research Scholar for the best published research paper in material sciences with highest impact factor for the year 2020 goes to Akash Nidankar for his paper titled Self-Assemble Helical Array for the Stabilization of Triple State, published in NJ Vidhan Chemi International Edition with the impact factor 11.690. Dr. Krishnan Award to the best published research paper in computational sciences with the highest impact factor for the year 2020 goes to Shailaja Jain for her paper titled The Effect of Solvent-Substrate Non-Covalent Interaction on Distereoselectivity in Intramolecular Carbonyl and the Staudener 2+2 cycloaddition reaction, published in Journal of Physical Chemistry with the impact factor of 2.6. Dr. Saurabh Paul Award to the best published research paper in physical chemistry or chemical physics with the highest impact factor for the year 2020 goes to Jinoyo Manappadan for the paper titled Unraveling the Distinct Surface Interaction of Modified Graphene's Nanostructure with Methylene Blue Dye through experimental and computational approaches, published in Journal of Hazardous Material with the impact factor of 9.038. Dr. Joshi, Dr. Shivram Award to the Research Scholar for the best published research paper in polymer sciences and organic inorganic hybrid material with the highest impact factor for the year 2020 goes to Meena Ghosh for the paper titled Scalable Synthesis of Manganese-doped Hydrated Vanadium Oxide as a Cathode Material for the Aqueous Zinc Metal Battery, published in SCS Applied Material and Interfaces with the impact factor of 8.758. Dr. B.D. Kulkarni Award for the best published research paper in chemical engineering and technology with the highest impact factor for the year 2020 goes to Praveen Bhuge for his paper entitled Extractive Distillation Configuration for Nitric Acid Dehydration Using Sulfuric Acid as a Solvent, published in Industrial and Engineering Chemical Research with the impact factor 3.5. Dr. Paul Ratnasami and Dr. Ms. Sunita B. Kulkarni Award to the research paper Best Published Research Paper in Catalysis with the highest impact factor for the year 2020 goes to Yogita Soni for a title Spectroscopic Evidences for the Size-Dependent Generation of Palladium Species responsible for the low temperature carbon oxide oxidation activity on palladium SBS15 nanocatalyst, published in Applied Catalysis B, environmental with the impact factor of 16.683. NCL-RF Brahmachari Sharma Best PhD Thesis Award for the year 2020 shared by Mr. Rahul Jagtap for the thesis titled Best Metal Catalyzed Carbon-Hydrogen Bond Functionalization of Heterosteron Scope and Mechanistic Perspective by the Mr. Ranjish for the thesis titled Transition Metal Sulfide Derived Nanocomposite for the Oxygen Reduction Reaction and Water Splitting Applications. Yeah, now move on to the final and most awaited session of the program, the poster award declaration. Since 24th of Feb, a total 97 poster were displayed by NCL students. These posters include all major topics like biological sciences, physical chemistry, material sciences, organic chemistry, catalysis, chemical engineering and process development. All posters were extremely interesting. However, since this was a competition, after a very tough evaluation of all the posters, the judges have decided the winners. In biological sciences, the winners are okay. In organic chemistry, the winners are Digambar Kamble, Rahul Chaudhary, Veer Saira. In catalysis and inorganic chemistry, the winners are Indrajit Chauhan, Priyanka Volko, Kailash Singh. In polymer chemistry, awardee is Navnath Kakade. Physical and material chemistry awardees are Apurva Lahangokar, P. Ajmal, Pooja Deshpande. Chemical engineering and polymer engineering awardees is Suneha Patil. In biological sciences, awardees are Sonia Agarwal, Meenakshi Pillai, Aishlesha Moudgil. Yes, thank you. We congratulate all awardees. That brings us to the end of award declaration part of the function. Thank you all for your great enthusiasm throughout the program. Now, I request Dr. Rakesh Doshi to propose a vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, all. It's a matter of pride that I am proposing a vote of thanks for the Science Day celebration jointly organized by CSIR NCL Pune and IICT Hyderabad. On behalf of CSIR NCL and IICT family, we would like to sincerely thank our chief guest, Professor Rishikesha Krishnan, for gracing the occasion and delivering the National Science Day lecture and sharing his valuable thoughts on India's new science, technology, and innovation policy and its impact on the development of human capital. Thanks to our director, Dr. Chandrasekhara, and chairman of Group of Scientists, Dr. Sunil Joshi, for their continued support and guiding us in organizing this event. NCL Research Foundation is gratefully acknowledged. Also, we would like to thank all the sponsors of various award categories, and especially Professor Ashwini Kumar Nangia, former Director CSIR NCL, for sponsoring a new award, Mrs. Uma Deva Guptapu and Professor Ashwini Kumar Nangia Award in the category of Best Woman Research Scholar in Interdisciplinary Research, which is being introduced from this year and onward. Also, we would like to thank Mr. G. Prabhakaran and the team for handling all the different evaluation and supervising the various activity related to the Science Day celebration. We thank all the staff of the Student Academic Office and the CSR office at NCL for processing the application of the students for different awards. We most sincerely thank the various award selection committee members for their sincere efforts and long hours spent in evaluation. Thanks to Mr. Nikhilesh Yadav for setting up a Science Day conference website and for facilitating and simplifying the poster registration. Also, we would like to thank Hari Krishna and NCL MIS BDD team for their technical support in conducting the online presentation of awardees and today's main event. We thank Mr. Sunil Patel and the team for taking care of all the logistics and arrangement during the Science Day celebration and poster presentations. Thanks to all student volunteers for their help and during the poster presentation and who entirely managed the Science Day celebration by anchoring various sessions and arranging all the events. This event would not be possible without the enthusiastic participation of the student from all the divisions. A sincere word of appreciation and thanks to the poster presenter and the other who participated in various award categories and made this celebration eventful. I also wish to congratulate all the award winners and the participants in this event in a large number. Last but not the least, we thank you all for your presence here today. Thank you everyone.
This brings us to the end of our program. Thank you all for attending it. Namaskar.